So a question that keeps coming up every time I post photos on Instagram or Twitter is how I edit my real estate photos. So today I thought I would just do a quick and dirty tutorial on how I edit them and the style of editing that I utilize to get the photos that I do. Stick around. What's good, guys? Welcome back. Ken here, you're watching OriginaldoBo, and today I'm going to show you how I edit my real estate photos. Now, before we get started, I just want to say that I have not been doing this very long, and that if you want a really in-depth tutorial, there's a lot of channels that do this, and there's channels that I lean on and have learned everything I know from, such as Rich Baum or Nathan Cool. And if it wasn't for my buddy Steve explaining things a little bit further in detail, I wouldn't be this far along. So I would suggest looking at his Instagram as well, because it helps me get inspired for different types of composition on shots. But I'll be sure to link Nathan and Rich's channel down below if you want to check out their videos on this style of editing. Now, the style of editing that I'm going to show you guys today is called Flambient, which takes a flash exposure and blends it with an ambient shot to basically give you a super even exposure and a naturalistic look. So we're going to jump into Lightroom so I can go over the explanation of these shots. Now, I take one ambient shot, and typically I'll shoot in multi brackets, so that way I can choose the best of those brackets that I want to use. So I shot this shot at 11 millimeters at f8. All my shots were taken at f8, by the way. Sometimes I float between f7.1 and f8. I do use a Sony a6100 for my shots. That's an APS-C sensor size. So here's my ambient shot. I've got 2 under. Here's my 2 over on the shot. And then I also take a flash shot, which I wasn't really totally happy with this flash. It wasn't really all that balanced. So I ended up taking another flash shot to try to get a little bit more detail in the window pull area, which I think I was able to get a little bit. Now, if I was really stressed out about this, I could have did a better job on the window pull. I didn't really worry about it. I think the window looks just fine for what it is. Some people worried a little bit too much about the window pulls. Now, one thing you need to do before you can even bring these into Photoshop to start editing is to make sure that you did your level adjustments and your profile corrections. So I use the Sony 10-18. Lightroom already knows what type of lens it is, so it makes it really easy to apply these corrections. Of course, you can set presets and shortcuts to go ahead and apply all this upon import. I don't, just for the sake of tutorial. I wanted you guys to see how you can enable profile corrections. And then what you would need to do is go up to your settings and then copy those settings and paste it to each of those photos that you're going to bring over to Lightroom. So now that I know I want to go ahead and edit this photo here, so I'm going to control. I'm going to take the ambient exposure here. I may take this ambient exposure here, the over, just because it could give me a little bit more depth in the shot. I am going to take the flash shot, and I'm going to take the composite flash that I did, and I'm going to right click edit in. And when I say edit in, it's going to open up as layers in Photoshop. So why do I open it up as layers in Photoshop? Well, it's going to allow me to paint in the different exposures where I need them to be. So it's going to make the photo blend down to one singular image. So depending on how many layers you're working with, sometimes I can work with just 2 layers and that's fine. This shot has a little bit more because I really wasn't sure while I was actually shooting it. So I could have did a better shot, but you can see how complicated sometimes it is. So I stack my shots like this. I have my ambient shot layered up top first. I have that other ambient shot beneath, which I'm going to drag that one down to the bottom from this type. You can label these shots if you want. I don't. I never really have a problem remembering it. I will duplicate my top layer, which is my ambient base. I'm just going to click the Alt key and drag to the bottom, which gives me a copy. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. I'm going to turn that shot off. I'm also going to just drag this flash shot up top here. So you can see I'm clearly in the shot. It looks really weird, but you can see I'm clearly in the shot here. So what I want to do is I want to paint myself out of this layer here. I did this to try to get more detail in the window and to try to brighten this side up here, which I did accomplish that. But what I need to do is paint myself out. So first things first, I want to give myself a layer. But before I can even do that, I need to auto align all these layers. Now I was shooting on a wood floor, or it's a tile wood floor, but I shouldn't have had too much shift. So you can see I selected all my layers, and I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to come over here and go to auto align layers. Now this is going to ensure if there's any ghosting or shift that this will correct for it. So let's see if there is any. And there's just the slightest bit of shift in the image. You can just see along the edges here. If I zoom into it, you can see just around the edges, there's a tiny bit of shift. So if I didn't auto align that, we would have, you know, some potential ghosting happening. Now that may be not enough for anybody to notice, but you just always want to be safe rather than sorry. All right. So first things first, I'm going to disable those layers again. And I'm going to come down here to this image here. Now I'm just going to simply grab the image and drag it to the bottom. See that square with the circle at the bottom? That's going to create a layer mask. Now it's a white layer mask, which means it's not going to hide it, but it's going to allow me to bring everything beneath it up to the top. I have a black brush. Easiest way to remember this is if I have a white layer mask, I want a black brush. If I have a black layer mask, I want a white brush. You can always switch that by just highlighting over the black and white and just click into X, and that will change that for you. So as far as my brush size goes, for something like this, I want a really big brush. I want something that's maybe about 1800, and I want a hardness of, let's say, 10% hardness. Oop, not 100%. And I want a flow of, I will say, 20% flow. Now what I'm going to do is simply just drag my brush and paint in the image here. So I'm just painting in the image beneath, clearing me out of the way, making sure I get all that. I had an iPad in my hand because I do use a Cam Ranger. So I'm making sure the image is nice and exposed. Also going to grab the ceiling here a little bit. I didn't really like that. I got some light leak coming in from this 8200. Not really sure why it keeps happening, but it does. So I want to grab that. I may switch back over to a white brush because I think I took a little bit too much over here. And I got a really good window pull right here. It's actually really good. So we'll just grab a little more there. And then I'll switch back over and just take a little bit more off top. So that looks pretty good. Oh, I painted myself back in. I need to switch back over. There we go. Sometimes you'll do that. You want to be careful, especially if you're doing composited shots, that you don't actually paint yourself back in. That would be bad. So now that I have the image right where I want it, what I want to do is grab both of these images here. And this is what I do, but you know, everybody else, some people are different with this, but I'll grab these two images. I'm going to right click and merge layers. So now I have just one flash layer. So that's it. I have a balanced flash layer at this point, and then I have my ambient shot. Now, I know with Nathan's videos and Rich's videos, they like to use luminosity to kill some of that nasty color that could be coming in. You can see just behind here, you'll notice that there is some yellowish shift. So if I right click blend options and switch this over to luminosity, you'll see that yellow. I don't know if you saw it or not. Let me go back to normal, but look behind the plant that's sitting on the table. You'll notice there's some yellowish color on there. If I turn on luminosity, it kills that yellowish color. However, look at the top of the lamp now. You'll see that there isn't a shift in color, but if I turn on luminosity, we get some odd color shift. So that's why I duplicate that layer. So I'm going to click on OK. And you'll also notice right here, I've got some burn coming from this image. That's okay. We're going to fix a lot of this with the flash layer. So I'm just going to drag this down. Again, I'm using a white layer so I can still see the ambient. I'm going to switch my flow to 5%. And I'm also going to take my hardness down to, we'll say 5% on the hardness. It's an arbitrary number. You can use whatever you want. And now with me selecting the layer mask, which is the white layer mask, I'm just going to paint in the flash image beneath it. So you can see I'm just coming over that. And it's giving me that window pull. That looks good. Being very careful here. I'm just going to paint in a little bit there. And then I'm coming over here. And you can see I'm painting again. Just sort of bringing up that flash. I'm painting in this corner here where we had some of that color shift. And I'm coming over here, getting rid of that shadow that the flash eliminated. And I may add some shadow back in there just to make it look natural, because the windows coming in, that shadow is pretty natural. And you can see I just created a pretty harsh shadow on the ceiling. That is not a natural shadow, so we'll want to go ahead and get rid of that. We also have some what looks to be a little bit of light leak from this 8200. So what I'll do is I'll switch the brush back over and I'll just eliminate some of that light leak there. And I'm going to come over here, eliminate some of that light leak and get rid of some of those shadows that I accidentally created. So I created some shadows right there. I'm just going to eliminate that. You can see just by painting that out, just eliminates it. And I'll just add a little bit more shadow right there. Makes it interesting. Some people don't like that, but I feel like that's natural because the window is right there. So it's bringing that in. So I need to bring some ambience over here. There we go. So we got a weird little oddity right there happening. It's not a big deal. Again, I duplicated that layer for a reason. So I'm going to bring this layer all the way to the top. You can see I did not run any sort of luminosity on this. So what I want to do now is I'm going to command bring down, and it's going to create a layer mask hide. So now what I'll do is I'll just sort of paint over this light a little bit, sort of getting rid of any of the imperfections created by luminosity. Same thing up here. Get rid of that imperfection. Paint over here, which will give a little bit more contrast and bring some color back. Bring some color back to the table. And there. Bring some color back. There. So we brought some color back into that. That looks pretty good. I think that looks better. Now I'm going to bring this other ambient shot up to the top again. Oh, bring it all the way to the top. And I'm going to, again, I'm going to do a layer mask hide by clicking the Alt key on my keyboard, layer mask hide. And then what I'll do is I'll just paint in a little bit of ambience down beneath here, just to brighten up the scene. Nothing too crazy. Maybe a little bit on the wall here, because I got a really good shot just to brighten up the wall. Maybe to brighten up the ceiling as well. There, that looks pretty good right there. If I wanted to, I can come back down to disable and I can see, okay, so I need to right here. Let's add a little bit more. I'm going to zoom in on that. And then we'll just switch brushes. And I just want to get a little bit more on that light right there. There, just something like that. I'm going to shrink the brush size down again. I got a little bit on that light there. Always finicky. And I'm just going to... All right, let's go ahead and do this. There we go. We'll go ahead and clean up some of this here. Perfect. Got rid of some of that cast burn. Nice. Looks decent. There we go. Perfect. And that looks pretty good. So now what I would do in this instance, I will go ahead and highlight all these areas here. And I would merge them. Merge layers. And we'll do flatten image. And then I'm just going to go ahead and file save. We've saved that image. It's going to go back to Lightroom. So this is the image we were just working with. I am just going to crop it a little bit because again, we had that little tear on the sides. Crop. Crop. There we go. Perfect. So now it's just running your final, you know, the final things that you want your image to see. So maybe add some more contrast. These are just arbitrary numbers, of course. I can drop my highlights down a little bit, which sometimes I do. I'll drop my highlights, bring up my shadows a little bit. Something like that. Check my white balance. Oof, too much. I want the shot cooler, but not that cool. There we go. Something like that. Add some clarity to the shot by going like 32. That's maybe too much. So maybe we'll add about 20 on the clarity. And yeah, maybe just add a little bit of sharpen into the image. And I feel like that lamp needs a little more attention. So the last thing I would do is maybe add a little bit of saturation to the lamp. Something like that. And add a little more saturation to that green. And we'll take the luminance down on the back there. There we go. There. And that's it. So, I mean, it's quick and dirty. It's not perfect. Like I said, Nathan and Rich do this so much better than anybody I know. But this is just how I'm able to process photos super quickly. There's all sorts of different techniques. And every time you take a photo, it's always going to be different depending on how you shot it in camera. If you don't get it right in camera, it's going to make something like this very, very difficult to do. So the easier you make it on yourself by getting things right in camera, the easier it will be when you're delivering it and processing your images. But hopefully this helped give you some idea of how I do these shots and how I'm able to get the images the way they are. If you enjoyed, be sure to go ahead, hit that like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do so. And I will be back with another video really soon. Take care and stay original.